Hey guys, we got Brady Slack today. I'm super excited to talk more with him. He's been a massive mentor, strategist, almost like a business partner to me with my investments and with my business. So I'm super happy to have him back here.
Don't hype me up too much.
I'm hyping you up. You deserve it.
Thank you for asking me to be on here. I'm excited to chat it up for a little bit.
Yeah, man. To give a little bit of stuff that Brady's known for, massive in the Utah County, Utah area. He's world class with tax investments and business strategist. The reason I found you was actually some of the biggest names in Utah County that I looked up to, clear 8, probably 9-figure earners, referred you and talked about you. And so I looked at you, came to you, and I'm like, he charges a bit more than what my guy currently charges me, my little mom and pop shop guy. And you've made me every dollar times 100 back. So I really appreciate, what you've done for me, but for other people, that's what he's known for. He recently, made an exit.
Yeah.
If you want to discuss a little about that, we can. But
I lay my cards at face value. We can go into anything, however I can help.
Yeah, and then if you know Brady, he's a countryman at heart. He's got his boots on.
I'm the biggest wannabe there is. I'll just admit that right from the beginning.
He's got a third boy just here,
yeah.
Not too recent, and he's got his dream laid out, the big ranch and the kids and the cattle and
bring it on.
I think when I describe you to other people like that, like here's all the financial success he's built, and even the thousands of ways he's done for other people. He wants to live on a ranch and he's a countryman at heart. People are like, are you sure? Like that's the right guy? I'm like, trust me. So how did you fall into that side of business coming from that kind of background? Like, that just the uniqueness, yeah. I think is what gives you your superpower. And I kind of want to learn more from you on that.
I've tried to figure that out myself because I didn't come from that. My mom is a school teacher. And she was a stay-at-home mom through my entire childhood. She didn't actually get back into the workforce until – I'm the oldest of 6 boys, so she didn't get back into the workforce until my youngest brother was in school himself, and she basically had nothing better to do besides go back to work and teach. That was her education, and that was her background. My dad's been a government worker for 22, 23 years. He's been a facilities and maintenance operations manager, and so I had a good childhood. We were by no means rich, we were definitely middle class. But when I was in college, trying to figure out what I wanted to study, I knew is I wanted to make money. I didn't know how. I actually started my uncle is a dean at Utah Valley University, and he's like, hey, you could make a lot of money being a doctor. And I liked medicine. I liked helping people. And so my major was university studies, but I was on track to just get a quick degree so that I could go become a doctor of some sort. Until I barely passed my first biology class with a D+. I was like, yeah, that's not happening. Check that off. But I studied accounting. That was the next place I went into. And the only reason I chose accounting over business management was a quicker degree. Sure. But the only reason why I chose accounting was because I just kept hearing accounting is the language of business. And I had just gotten home from an LDS church mission in a third world country. I was in Colombia, South America. And the reason why I felt like I experienced so much success on my mission was because I picked up the language really quick. All the slangs, all the accents, I say this very humbly. I was very fortunate. I could speak the language really good. And so accounting is the language of business. I had a lot of success with the Spanish language. And I was like, if accounting is the language of business and I want to do business and make a lot of money doing it, then I need to understand the language.
Wow. Interesting.
So, and then long story, I can spend all day on this. I had a mission buddy whose uncle was one of the deans of the School of Business at Utah Valley University, and he specialized in personal financial planning. So I ended up becoming a double major. And then I was dating my now wife, and her dad owns a pretty successful business. I'm repping today.
Cool.
And he was like, hey, my accountant needs some help. Do you want to intern for him? It's a paid internship, and it happened to be paying more than where I was working at the time. I was doing some real estate, and I was like, sure, I might as well, because then I can get the education. And so while I was working for him, some things happened. I got connected to some really great clients, and I was put into an advisory position really early on. I picked it up really quick. And then some things happened at that firm, and Unbeknownst to me, I had one of our clients who I'd built a really good relationship with approach me and say, hey, I'm doing a bunch of real estate seminars. I need a tax guy to come and present at these. I'm not necessarily fond of your boss. You seem to know like what you're doing. Would you come and do them with me? And I mean, here I am. At the time, I was 23 years old. I wasn't a college graduate. I'd barely just gotten enough certifications to file tax returns and represent my clients with the IRS. Mm-hmm. And things weren't going great at the firm I was working at. In fact, I had just had a meeting with them and said, hey, if I'm doing a lot more, if I can't get paid more money, I'm going to go find another job.
Yeah.
They didn't want to pay me, and the opportunity came up, and so I took a jump. That was my one lucky break, and I'm very blessed and I'm very fortunate to realize that was my lucky break, and I really haven't looked back since. There wasn't an option for me to look back. At that time, we just bought our first house. My wife had just found out we were pregnant with our first son. Like my back was against the wall, and I took it and I've ran with it. That was kind of that opportunity that pushed me into doing everything that I'm doing today.
I think when I first met you, I was shocked at how young you were for how
That's
many
why
names.
I've always kept the facial hair.
Yeah.
Truthfully, like if I shave, I have a baby face. And when I started, people didn't take me seriously. And I was working with entrepreneurs that had 8 and 9 figures, like nine figures. I think it's thrown around too often. They weren't doing 9 figures, but like they were millionaires and multimillionaires. And most people who would you go take advice from someone who is 23 years old, doesn't have a college degree? Like the answer is no. But the minute I started having, I just looked a little bit older. Yeah. And I'm already I already kind of have an older soul. I'm a little bit more mature. I can carry on conversations pretty easily, and so I kept my facial hair because I needed to look older so that people half trusted what I was saying. As funny as that sounds, like that's legitimately the truth.
You got me because when I first met you, I'm like, okay, guy's like probably mid 30s, young 30s. I think you were like 20. You were like my age.
I'm 29. I turned 29 in September.
Yeah, about my age. And I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
But then in the back of my head was like, no, this guy said his name. This guy said his name. This guy said his name. Yeah. So like he's got something. But I think again it paints the uniqueness that you have with what you do. Yeah. 'Cause I mean, I feel like people jump their tax guy so often. I was before that, but all my friends are, even now, all the time, even after several businesses. I think when you land on someone unique, then it's everything to your business.
It wasn't hard. It's not hard to be good in that space, mostly because when you talk about taxes, there's such a big pain point with people, and most of it is their own fault. Like most people are so bad with their own money that it's easy for them to push that off and blame someone else. Yeah. And I'm not, most accountants could do a better job as well. And I will say that there were a lot of things that I probably could have done better, and I acknowledge those. But it's so easy for people to switch and jump and want to find someone else because it's just like the greener pasture conversation. The pasture's always greener on the other side. There's always someone else who could do better. And I will say most accountants could do a better job. Most accountants are awful communicators. Most accountants do not set clear expectations with their customers or their clients. Most accountants just want to do the work at the beginning of the year, get paid, and then not have to worry about anything. Yeah. But the flip side to that is most accountants don't do what their clients are doing. And that was the big differentiator for me. Is I was the guy that I learned under, he owned a little bit of real estate, and he obviously owned the business. But outside of that, he wasn't invested in funds. He wasn't invested in syndications. He didn't have other businesses and partnerships and all the things that he was telling his clients what to do. He wasn't doing them. And so that was one of the kind of internal notes that I took working with him and advising clients was these guys, they want to work with someone who understands what they're going through. And I could sit in a room with 50 other accountants, and the only reason why I would have a much higher conversion rate than they would is because I can speak from experience. I've had partnerships. I've invested in funds. I've invested in syndications. I know about tax equity. I've invested into alternative assets and renewable energies. And yes, I've owned real estate. I've done what my clients did and were wanting to do. And I think that's what set me apart.
I think too, like coupled with that, you take that whole section and you add in that you did do accounting and finance and strategy with these massive widespread amount of people in different kinds of businesses at a high level. You saw like what they did that worked, and when they failed, you saw it in their books, and you're like, that's where that led to that. And so you could advise other people to not do that, or to learn from that experience from you. And so that's what drew me to you and to people like you in general, is that you just have such a pool of like case studies that you can just pull from all the time, and you're in the weeds.
Hell, like
I've
lost plenty of money in investments and in my own businesses to know probably shouldn't do this, probably should do that. It's funny. I'm actually doing something that I've never done before. I'm taking 3 multi-million-dollar companies and I'm merging them all together. I'm acquiring 2. I bought into my dad's business that's doing really well. And this is kind of my next fun project that I'm working
Tell us about
on.
it.
Yeah, so I'm merging these 3 companies, and but what I'm doing is I'm taking the exits that I've had the last 2 or 3 and saying, here's what went awful in those transition periods, and taking them into this merger to say, here's how we can take this and make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible, so that there's not as many hiccups. So trust me, I've had my failures that have helped me get to the point where I'm at and say, this is what I've learned from, not only from the people that I've advised, but also just from my own experiences.
Man, I'm honestly like feeling kind of jealous. I know it's a bad thing to feel.
Don't feel jealous.
I'm jealous of.
Most of the time, I wonder what in the hell I'm doing. So
I know that there's the phrase like, if you knew what they actually went through in their shoes, you wouldn't want to trade places, right? So I'll consider that, in that thought. But I think a lot of people could find, if they could ask you a question as well, one that I get from a lot of people that I've spoken to you about is, what's the biggest thing that he sees as a success characteristic in an investment in a person? He's like, he sees an individual and is like, that guy's going to win. It doesn't matter if it's in whatever aspect.
I think people, good question. I think people underestimate one's ability to just problem solve. And just keep going through adversity. Like I'm in a men's group, and we do like a quarterly retreat. We were at our most recent retreat, and one of the guys, he was going through it. He was, he'd gotten laid off from a job. He was trying to sell real estate, and deals just weren't going through, and they'd racked up some credit card debt trying to survive, and finally, like I was sitting there, and some guys, and we were doing like a mini mastermind group, and some guys were trying to give him some advice, and I stopped and I said, why don't you just go get a job?
He didn't have a job?
He's like, why? He was trying to do real estate full time, and he had a couple listings. They were paying him a couple thousand, and I just said, why don't you just go get a 9-to-5? And he looked at me like I was asinine, and I was like, dude, you've just got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You're getting so far underwater that it's hard for you to even breathe.
Yeah.
Just go get a 9-to-5 to pay your bills and continue to do real estate until it picks up. Like,
sure.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
We're going through this transaction right now, and the sellers, the one company that we're buying and financing, the seller's financials are awful. Like, I wouldn't file his tax return as his advisor with the financials that he had trying to sell his business. I know the money's there.
Yeah.
I know the contracts are worth it. I know the company is set up to a point to where we can really explode it, and I'm very confident about it. But we took we took the information to the bank that we were wanting to finance, and I'd worked with this lender before. They'd helped close one of my transactions before, and they helped one of the buyers that I sold the company for. They'd helped that buyer as well. So I'd had a good relationship with this. He was the VP of sales of this bank, and I had a good relationship with him. I had a good relationship with the closer that was assigned to our case. But when the bank's closing committee reviewed the closing memo, the credit memo for our business that we're trying to buy, they declined it. And instead of giving us the amount of money that they wanted to, they gave us like 30%. They were going to give us like 30% of what we actually needed.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of it had to do with the financial information. Well, I go back to the seller of this business I'm trying to buy and go, hey, like has nothing to do with me. Like I
Yeah.
want it to, because I don't want to make you upset, but like I've got to figure out another solution. We've either got to renegotiate this deal because the value of your business, they're saying, is not what it is. And the seller was ready to walk. Like the seller kind of had some other offers on the table that then I was to the point where I was like, if you feel like you need to do that, then you need to go do that. But I started making phone calls, and I had 3 different private investors who were going to be able to lend me capital. And
Oh, wow.
so I was able to get a statement that said, "Hey, we can offer you financing." And here we are. We're going to close on the 27th of this month. But 30 days ago, I didn't even think we were going to get these deals. And the ability to problem solve and just work through that was the game changer, because that's the difference between us doing 1.5 next year and us potentially doing like 6 or 7 next year in the first 18 months. Was that.
Wow. I mean, I'm not surprised that's what you went to go do. I think I could see a lot of people in that situation just taking the door and just folding.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah. But I think that door that most people would have walked out on, you probably feel like the door was on fire and there was no way to get out the door. It's like you either had to get through the entrance that you wanted to get through, and there was no way to go back from it. And you just, like you were telling that one guy, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do in the moment and problem solve to the point where like it just probably bugs the hell out of you.
Action is rewarded, I think. And I think there's too many people that sit on the sidelines and they're waiting for the coach to tell them to go in, rather than just calling the next man and say, "Hey, go take a break for one play and let me get in." All I need is that one play. And if I get that one play, then I can show everyone else how good I actually am and how hard I'm going to work. But action is rewarded. And there's a lot of people that I don't think take action. But don't get me wrong, like taking that action is hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, taking that action at such a young age, with being how successful you were, to then taking the action now, or you're super young even for that profession to be into it, but now you're leaving into a bigger thing. I think that you could just look at that alone and just be like, this man is taking massive action.
It honestly scares me.
Yeah.
Like I'm leaving. The accounting industry is aged. Like they're very old, and I was very well positioned to grow our firm. When I left, we were on track to do about 2.5. We very easily could have scaled for the next 3 to 4 years and been at a $10 million accounting firm within the next 4 or 5 years. Like we had a very clear path to be able to do that, and it would have been very easy, and we would have been very well positioned to do that for a long time, because I'm younger and most accountants are old and they're retiring within the next 5 to 7 years. Yeah. So it honestly, one of the things that scared me most about selling the accounting firm was here's the path to be able to operate an 8-figure business with really, really healthy margins. We were operating at about 27% profit margin in the accounting firm, which is like really good in a service-based industry.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm leaving this, and at the time I had no idea what I was going to do, but now leaving that and going into like a blue-collar job, it's like, don't get me wrong, I know how to work hard. Sure. And I know how to get my hands dirty, and I know enough about our products to get us by. Yeah. But like it's been a little scary.
So, I mean, from people that become successful, especially at a young age, that's the common trend. Is just even when things are great, they go for better than great. Or when they feel good, they go to great, and great to whatever that the best or beyond that, or 10x. Like, I want to do that sooner. I'm sure many people watching this want to do that sooner. What would you like? As their advisor, let's say as their advisor, someone comes to you, I come to you and say, hey, I want to make this big jump. I'm super scared. Yeah. I have something great going on. I don't know why I would leave it. This thing is out there, but I mean, is it just as simple as like, oh, dude, just make the jump? It's like, is it just kind of like, hey, just pull your pants up and make the jump? Is it kind of like that? That's just kind of what it sounds like for most people.
I think it depends on the person and the situation. We didn't just sit down and say we're going to sell High Country Finance and then we'll see what comes after that. The reason we sold High Country Finance was because I co-founded a tech company, and we had a very specific tech that aligned with our our client portfolio in the accounting firm. The reason that we were selling the accounting firm was because it was a very viable asset that we could pull money from to reinvest back into the tech company. At the time, the tech company arguably had a pre-market value or a pre-money value of close to $8 million. And tech is inherently worth more than
the multiple on it.
Yeah,
crazy.
the multiple is way better than in an accounting. In an accounting firm, you're lucky if you get 1x trailing 12. Like that is industry standard.
Surprising. I wouldn't have thought that.
Very low.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
wow.
here we were with this asset that was about 1.8 to 1.9 million trailing 12, and here's this tech company that isn't making a profit, but it's worth considerably more. And so our plan was, let's sell the accounting firm, reinvest the capital back into the tech company so that we don't have to take on venture money and reduce our equity. That was the plan.
Yeah, yeah.
During the time that we were selling the accounting firm, some of the partners in the tech company decided to bring on venture money. And because I was not actively involved in the tech company, because I was running the accounting firm, my shares were going to get diluted more than others. So I just said, just buy me out. So I negotiated a buyout from the tech company and a buyout and we sold the accounting firm. So I literally went from 2 multi-million-dollar businesses to now just sitting there thinking, what am I going to do next? And I think a lot of it comes down to what is the calculated risk? Because after I sold the accounting firms, I've since built and I'm building 3 or 4 other companies on top of that, along with a debt fund. And one of my wife's friends, she was kind of asking, what's Brady doing now that he sold his company? And my wife was kind of explaining to her what was going on and what I was getting involved in, that I've started 2 or 3 other companies, I'm investing some investor money, and that I'm buying this other business with my dad. And there goes, it was my sister-in-law. She asked my wife, she goes, how, doesn't that stress you out? Doesn't that make you,
sounds like a lot of multiple
risky,
things.
You know?
Yeah.
And my wife and I talked about it later that night. She goes, do you feel like you're stressed? And I go, no, I actually, I'm happier than I've been in a long time.
Really?
I don't but for me, it's all calculated.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
and that's how it's really been for me all along. Is 30 minutes ago, I got a text from an individual that I know, and he has an opportunity to invest into a company pre-IPO at $2 a share, and then some of the returns look really great on it within the next 6 to 12 months. And I'm like, okay, great. What is $10,000? What is $20,000 to throw into this? If I get the return that they think they're going to get in 12 months, I could make $500,000.
Yeah.
What's $20,000 to get, how quickly could I go day trade and make $20,000? It might take me 2 weeks to go do that. So, okay, worst case scenario is I put $20,000 in, it doesn't do anything. I just got to day trade for 2 weeks and then I make my $20,000.
Just like the risk to reward. And it's all, like you were saying, calculated, and that's your world where know. I guess if you're that savvy in that world and you do know it, if the calculations are there, it's like the stress is minimized.
The stress is still there. Don't get me wrong. There are times where I'm like, holy crap, why did I just do that? Or I'm losing money, and but at the same time, action is rewarded, and the inverse to that is, I think some people overanalyze and the analysis by paralysis kind of sets in. Or paralysis by analysis sets in, and then they overanalyze everything, and then they shudder and they don't want to do it. And I see that as well. But sometimes I think you just got to put your feet forward and go. Yeah.
I like that. I think I catch myself, especially in my past, of the analysis by paralysis kind of thing. And it's like at the end,
I know you do. Well, you did. That was one of the main things. When we started working together, I was like, oh man, this Isaac's going to be hard to work with, because I'm going to tell him, hey, you can do X, Y, Z, but you're going to have to know the ins and outs of everything, And some of the best deals that I've been a part of, or some of the things where I've made the most amount of money, are deals that I wasn't necessarily involved in. I didn't have my hands on everything. And I wouldn't recommend this all the time. This isn't my favorite thing to do.
Sure.
But there have been a couple where it's like someone needs X amount of money and they give me the details, the rundown, and I'm just like, send me the wire instructions.
Is that just because of the person?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the people.
Yeah.
My circle is very small.
Really? I wouldn't think that.
As far as
your influence.
As far as who I do a lot with.
Sure. Okay.
I don't have many friends. I have tons of acquaintances, and I have a lot of people that I'm really grateful for in my life and people that I like to keep in touch with.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as hanging out with them on a weekend or going on like a couples trip with them, I can think of like 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's a couple.
I keep that circle pretty tight. But when someone in that circle of influence who I do trust, who I have done business with, does have that kind of an opportunity, it's like, okay, I might not need to do, for example, the guy that sent me this pitch deck 30 minutes ago. It's like, I don't need to do much homework.
Oh, really?
Hey, he's going to throw $50,000 into it. I feel okay throwing 25 into it.
Yeah.
I might, and like
that's so
that's kind of
valuable.
how I operate.
Yeah, well, it is so valuable. It's and I think you're one of those people for me. I think you've introduced a few investments.
Yeah.
And after the first one, I was like, okay. He's like, hey, I think you told me once, you're like, hey, Isaac, this is a new one. You're like one of the first few people I've told this one about.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it, Isaac. If you want to, you can, but this is brand new. I'm like, are you doing it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'll do it.
We did one together. And I honestly thought we were going to lose all of our money
It's one of my best ones.
Did it, and it's one of the best ones. I just took all my money out because I'm using some of it for the business acquisition, and I've got a couple other projects I'm working on. But that's been one of the best. That's been one of the best ones.
Yeah. Well, and what's wild is when I saw the investment, my first thought was like, this ain't me, bro.
But
this isn't my style.
So again, I was like, we could go ahead and lose everything. But the only reason why I did it is because I know I know the fund manager.
Yeah.
And he had put his name and reputation on everything. And I know that he's a person that wouldn't put his name and reputation on anything unless he knew it was going to succeed. And I knew he was going to do everything he could to make it succeed. So I'm going to bet on that jockey.
The jockey is it.
The jockey's important.
And
the horse is pretty important too.
Sure.
But the jockey is.
But if the horse has a stubbed foot, the jockey's going to take care of it. Like if there's a problem that happens with the investment, the jockey's going to do what he needs to do to take care of it, make amends, make sure everything's resolved afterwards or in the meantime. So, yeah, and I think you kind of been that jockey for me. It's like whatever horse he's throwing, bro. Like just let me know. It's like whatever horse he runs, like I want money on that horse, you know. But that's been great, and I think for a lot of guys, I try to let them know this is my experience with Brady, and anything that I've done with him personally, has been a hit. And a big hit on a few of them. And I kind of want to have you share a little bit about how that's coming to be and like with investments and stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there a criteria you look at? Is there a certain aspect, or is it all, like with the person and maybe with that person, maybe there's something that you see? Is it like a track record? Is it a, risk to reward?
I'm always going to put money in a place with someone that I trust, have done business with, or that I know is going to work as hard as I do to succeed. Like that is obviously something that I learned that kind of was solidified for me when we went through the venture capital process with that tech company. Like we quote unquote call it interviewed with dozens of venture capital private equity firms that we were looking to invest in our company. Mm-hmm. And it all came back to who are the founders? What are the founders like? What are the teams like? And ultimately that's what led me to just want to sell my equity rather than dilute it, is because I wanted to be done with it.
Oh, okay.
And the founding team changed, the dynamic of that founding team changed drastically enough for me to not want to be there anymore.
So it was the opposite effect of kind of
that's kind of what it turned out to be. Yeah.
Interesting.
And to this day, there's some friends and family round money that they've done, but to this day, there's zero venture money in that deal. Like the founder's important. I think the other way that I look at it is always what's going to be my return on capital. Like how long is it going to take for me to get my money back? I don't even I don't really even pay attention to the return. Just how long is it going to be until I get my money back?
Okay.
That's one thing that I look at. I've broken this rule. I have a rule that is don't invest in something that you don't know enough about it.
Sure, that's a big one.
I've broken that rule like 2 or 3 times this year.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about one. I think one is going to be an absolute home run. The other one, I'm excited about it because I know we're helping people, but like we're losing money left and right. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But like that is one thing that I weigh heavily is like if I don't understand it, if I don't understand, how you make money, or I don't understand the product or the deliverable, odds are I'm probably not investing into it.
If it doesn't calculate out.
Yeah, and then the third or the fourth factor is how much control do I have over it? How liquid is the capital? How involved am I going to be if it's more of like a venture or a partnership? Because the first person I'm betting on is myself 10 out of 10 times.
Well, I mean, you care most about your money.
Yeah. So those are, and then, obviously, like, you just kind of run the numbers. Does it make sense? If it smells funny, it probably is funny, So those are, I think, some just like high level things that I look at.
What's something you would say when a deal sounds too good to be true that it usually is? Because I feel like I think I've received some of those deals from you. I'm like, that sounds too good to be true. So far, they've been great for the past couple of years. Yeah. And so when I refer these things out to other people, they're like, it sounds too good to be true. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, I get that. And I don't want to push you over your risk tolerance or your stress level. But I also want to help other people get to a different level of financial success with investments.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say to that?
Probably just do your homework and understand what is the risk versus reward. Like, why does it seem too good to be true? For example, this debt fund that we have.
That's kind of what I'm getting to. Yeah.
I've had quite a few people be like, there's no way you're getting that. And a lot of it has to do with the client portfolio that we currently have for this section of the debt fund. This client will not get institutional money. He makes a good income, but his inability to fund other ventures has left him in a really tough spot because he's just self-funding himself.
Gotcha.
I was in a master class. So one of my really good mentors from a tax and accounting perspective was Tom Wheelwright. I was really close with Tom for a couple of years. I was in his CPA network, Wealthability, and he would often bring Rich Dad Poor Dad advisors into our network to give us tidbits or advice or education or whatnot. And one of them, there was a group of, I don't know what it was. It was like right before Thanksgiving 2 or 3 years ago. And he brought Robert Kiyosaki on as his guest. And there was maybe 6 of us in the Zoom meeting. Like it was actually really intimate.
Wow, that's cool.
And Robert Kiyosaki kind of talked about the shift of the economies and what things were going to look like through maybe a Biden administration. This was right after the elections kind of deal. And he talked about the world no longer operates on capitalism. The world operates on creditism. So the more credit or the more access you have to available credit is what's actually going to help your businesses and your investments more than the amount of cash you have stacked. That made like that kind of rung for me. Anyways,
wow. I've never heard that.
So
that's
for
really
this
cool.
individual, this client that we have in the debt fund, sorry, that was a tangent.
No, it's great.
But the client that we have in the debt fund, his ability to available capital has exponentially increased his business, even though it is costing him more than an institutional line of credit.
It's more expensive.
But he doesn't care because he's making more money than what it's costing him to borrow that money for.
Huh.
We're leveraged. We're over leveraged on that debt fund. But the funny thing is when we tell people what our monthly rate of return is on that line of credit, because it is a line of credit, they get scared because it's too much money. In fact, I was on with another debt fund manager the other day because that private money is what's helping me fund this business acquisition. The business acquisition is costing me more money because I'm going private rather than institutional, but the speed of the money is going to help me make more money hand over fist in the long run. So I don't really care what it costs me because I'm making more money faster.
Wow. Okay.
But I was on the phone with them and we were talking about the dynamics of our 2 debt funds and what we were making and why we were making more money than they were, and their buy box and their client buy box was just different. And it's interesting because we actually are decreasing the return that our investors get in this debt fund. It's going to save our client a little bit more money, but we are closing more people and they are making less money than what we used to be doing at. The lower amount of money seems less like a pie in the sky theory than more money. People are afraid to make money, generally speaking.
Oh, and then that's why I kind of want to ask the question before of like, when it sounds too good to be true, like, but if it's not, I mean, do you just like, I don't want people to accept if it sounds too good to be true, it is. And the ones that I miss, I'll just accept because those ones are the ones that could really make the big difference.
You don't get me wrong. Like, I think it is far greater to make money over the long run it's way more secure. You are going to make a lot of money. Like compound interest is the ninth wonder of the eighth wonder of the world. Like that is a real thing, and I'm not going to negate that. And I would say you kind of have to take those deals with a grain of salt when they come to you, and really ask yourself, what is the potential upside? Why would that potential upside be unrealistic in a normal setting? What is the downside? How is my downside mitigated? And I think more often than not, when it is a bad deal, when it is too good to be true, it's because they can't accurately explain how the downside is mitigated. They only talk about the upside.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think that's the difference is like with this debt fund, anyone that I talk to, it's like, I'm not going to tell you there's no risk. This is an investment. As an accredited investor, you should know that there is risk in any investment you make. You have the potential to lose all your money. Here is how we are helping you avoid that. And then we go through the lien filings, we go through the collateral, we go through the agreements, we go through the personal guarantees. Like we go through everything that we have done to try and mitigate that risk. Can I still guarantee it? I can't.
Yeah.
But I feel really confident about it.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that like those are some of the differences. If everything that they're talking about is the upside and they don't talk about the downside, like that would be a red flag for me. Okay.
That would make sense. That would make kind of avoiding that conversation, kind of hiding those things off to the side.
Yes.
Yeah, that would make sense. But so I've been involved with it so far. It's been awesome. It's been just kind of what you've been telling me.
Month.
Yeah. And it's been covering my burn.
And he's asking for more. So
really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, right,
for him, it's going great. Again, he put him in a situation. We've helped put him in a situation where, again, he's making more money than he's been able to, and he has other CPG brands that he's been able to use his own capital to help fund and start. And so for him, he's like, hey, I would love more capital.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll help give you more capital.
Yeah. That's cool. You have that you kind of created that opportunity yourself with some partners and kind of found that yourself, which like for me, it was the jockey. And then when the horse was explained, it's I also like that it was local. It was a physical product. There was no other debt attached to it.
Yeah.
So a lot of like massive green flags that I liked about it. And it's very similar to a lot of the other investments that you've also introduced me to, and I'm sure other people, stuff like that. With where you're going now with your businesses and investments and always, you got a big plate going on right now. And then you also have 3 kids and a wife and your work boots on and your whole ranch, to take over. How do you do all that? Like, and I'm, that's a very like loaded big question, but it's kind of like, how do you manage it is probably a better way to put that. How do you manage all that?
I'm trying to figure out if I manage it well. So maybe ask someone else that I'm involved with. I have really good partners in some of my ventures. And strategically, I have added people to those ventures who know more about the ventures than I do so that they can kind of take control. This is kind of a tangent.
Sure,
like
go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Like 5 months ago, my wife, she's a cosmetologist, she started complaining about this lash serum. She does lots of eyelashes, and she says that this lash serum is awful. I haven't found a good one. In one of my other business networking groups, Apex, there's a guy by the name of Craig. He used to be a QVC executive. He's sold a couple e-commerce brands. I called him, and he still manages some e-commerce brands. I said, hey, could you do some market analysis for me? Yeah. He did some market analysis for me on lash and hair growth serums. And he came back like a month later. I paid like $5,000 for the study. And he goes, there's really just not a market for it. I don't know that I would invest into it. And I said, that's fine. Like, hey, thanks for looking into it for me. Yeah. Like 2.5 weeks later, he called me back and he goes, hey, I've got something for you. And it was this lady who she's owned a topical skincare and corrective makeup company with pure natural ingredients for 20 years, not doing a whole lot with her business, just wanting to sell. She's a Grammy award-winning makeup artist. Some of her clients include Johnny Depp, Jennifer Lopez, like crazy Hollywood names.
Good for her.
And she just wanted to sell it. And he's like, do you want to buy it and create an exclusivity licensing agreement and partner with me on it? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. What the heck? What else? So like I did that one, but that's one of the ones where it's like he knows way more about that space than I do. Her husband, the lady that we essentially did the licensing agreement with, her husband is a chemist, a registered licensed chemist. And so like I put smarter people and I bring people into the deal with me that know what they're actually doing. My partner, he spent 2 weeks in China a month ago just sourcing all of our products and all of our shipping and everything that we need to set up to do that. Like someone asked me yesterday how it's going, and I could very easily lose $50,000 and I might not know it in that venture, or we could very easily sell for $20 million in the next 3 years. Like that is how crazy this one is. But
That's
the one with my dad. My dad knows a lot about the products. He knows a lot about the suppliers. We're going to be able to grow to $6 to $8 million in the next 24 months really easily because of that. But I bring into that business a lot of the back-end experience and be able to implement the CRMs and implement the invoicing and implement the processes and the systems. Like I've been able to learn and understand that really well. With the debt fund, I know a lot about the legalities. I know a lot about the entity structures. I can help evaluate deals that come in. That's been my kind of expertise that I've done for the last 3 or 4 years. But I partner with Lame because he has raised arguably more capital than 95% of individuals have over the last 4 years. Like so that is honestly the only reason why I've been able to get to the point where I'm at.
Yeah, I see that as a common thing with a lot of guys is they can't get over a couple $100,000 without making great partners, and without that, it's like it's that whole other level of business that you can reach, but you can't do it all on your own. I mean, very small people maybe could, but even then, it's like you take the biggest names, Elon Musk. It's like everyone thinks Elon Musk does everything by himself, but the amount of employees and partners and every little thing that he does, it's like he couldn't have created all these different businesses just being the one guy.
I have most of my time is spent in this business that we're buying and doing with my dad. But Tuesdays are kind of like my other entity days. Tuesdays I have a meeting for human services businesses that we have, so helping special needs people for an hour and a half. I also have a meeting with a marketing gal that I have every other Tuesday to go over marketing strategies for all of the organizations that I have. On Tuesday, I have an hour-long meeting with my partner in this topical skincare business that we meet for an hour every week just to go over logistics and what he's done the last week or what tasks they've assigned to me or what things I need to help accomplish because I'm majority owner. But Tuesdays are my main day, and then I leave about an hour every morning just to get caught up on everything else. But then after that, I get to hang out.
Wow. Well, I think I should take that. I think I need to take that from you is because I very much like to do it on my own and have it done my way. Make sure it's 100% the way I want to do it. I can see already, as you say that, the limiting factor it's going to hit probably even now I don't even see it, but especially in the future, if I want to go to that level, I'm going to have to find partners to do that.
I've always said I'd rather have 10% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape.
That
10% of a watermelon is way bigger than 100% of a grape. I can go fast alone, but we can go far together. That's kind of something that it's always stuck with me. I learned it really early on. I'm not going to give you more of my watermelon if I have a larger portion of the watermelon. You've got to earn that sucker, or you got to pay me for it. But intentionally speaking, I'd rather give a little to gain a lot than just have it all to myself.
What would you say to up and coming accountants or people wanting to learn the language of accounting? Or, I mean, that's what entrepreneurs I feel like need to learn more of. I think they kind of neglect that. I feel like I did, and I got super lucky having you as my partner. That's how I felt about it, right? What advice would you give to those guys that are coming up in sales and doing their own business, maybe even W-2, on where they can go to find something that they're missing in that world of language of finance?
This one's hard because I think you could go so broad with this.
Sure.
There's so many things. I think number one, more people need to become familiar with money and have a better relationship with their own financial situation. In this men's group that I'm in, every quarter we kind of go over a new subject. So this quarter's subject is actually finances.
There you go.
It's funny to me, one of the questions that was asked in our Tuesday meeting, we have a weekly meeting every Tuesday. One of the questions that was asked was, how do you know what your financial goal is for 2025, and have you created a plan to get to it? And out of 49 guys on the call, there was maybe 5 of us that raised our hand and said, I know exactly how much money I want to make. I'm going to net, like my goal, I'm going to net $1 million, and I can tell you exactly how I'm going to do it and from what entities I'm going to make that from.
Wow.
Like that, I have it all written down, and
Yeah.
I conservatively have written some of them down that I anticipate doing more, but I'm like, this is exactly how I know I'm going to make. But there are 5 of us, 10%. We're like, yeah, I know exactly. Most people, 95% of people don't have a good relationship with their own money. They don't know where their money goes. They don't know what they're spending money on. They don't know how much money they make. They don't know how much money's in their investments. And I'm not saying you need to look at it every single day, but just generally speaking, I could tell you, here's what's in that bank account. Here's what's in this bank account. Here's what my monthly expenses are. Here's what I have in these investments. Here's what the returns are doing. Here's how much I'm making from them. Like I've had to become really good at understanding that.
Is that all like in a spreadsheet or like a software you use, or how are you doing that to
the
track it?
26th or the 27th of every month are my least favorite days, but those are the 2 days that I pay all. I do not. There are a couple bills that I have on auto pay, but I personally don't auto pay all my bills.
Just so you can see it.
I still go in and I still keep a spreadsheet, and I
Interesting.
download my statements from my credit cards from my main business, and I go through all of them, and I highlight which ones are investments into other businesses. I highlight which ones I need to go in and cancel so that the next day on the 27th I can go in and cancel them. Yeah,
Wow.
But I've had to become very good at that. But
Yeah.
this is I say this very humbly, because I have become a good steward at that. I have been immensely blessed on the back end with crazy opportunities to make more money. You will not make more money unless you become a good steward over what you have. And I firmly believe that.
I think probably just slips away and gets away from you without you even knowing, and then it causes probably more stress because you don't know.
Yep. And then it's probably on something stupid. So when you have to go explain it to your spouse, you're embarrassed, and then you just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And so for someone at home, let's say they're making some decent money, they want to start tracking it. What would be like a 1, 2, 3 plan? You'd say like, go do this, put it here.
I just take the time to do it. Set aside the time to do it and do it. Even if you don't want to do it, do it. Set aside 1 day a month where you can download it, everything, and look at it and take your statements apart and go through it and itemize it and put it into categories, or just go through and start highlighting the expenses that you can cut out or that you don't need to spend money on. And then the following day, if they're reoccurring, just go cancel them, I think the other thing to this too, and this was something that my wife was divorced from a previous marriage before we got married, and I say this with all love. She was kind of ruined from that marriage because her ex-spouse was so anal with money that it did kind of ruin her. Like for the first part of our marriage, every other week had to sit down and review bank statements and credit card statements. And she had to know where money was going. And don't get me wrong, I like to know, but that stresses me out. And then she'd want to budget and put everything into a budget, and she'd want to put money aside for travel. And I'm just like, if we want to go on a trip, let's just go on a trip. We have the money there. We can go on a trip, But I had to get really clear with her and help her understand that you can only save so much money before it does you no good. You have to be thinking about how you can make more money. You are going to have expenses. Like no matter who you are, no matter what your income is, you're going to have expenses. And you can only save so much of those expenses. Your focus should always be, how can I go make more money?
Yeah,
I'm going to live below my means. I'm going to stay at this level. But if I don't start making more money, it does you no good.
I think me and my wife have talked about this. We do a once a month, the first Sunday of the month, we do a Sunday planning thing of all of our finances. We have a software we go through and we itemize or put like a category for every transaction. Yeah. So we can see it. And I think a couple months ago we talked about it, how she's like, we need to save money on this. I'm like, hold on a second. I know you alone are way more capable to go make this than the time and effort it's going to take you to save this. So I think there's a balance. And I think most people, especially if you're coming from a lower or a straight middle class family, weigh so heavy on the saving that, and you forget all about the earning, and the saving you can only do so much. And it's like a 1-to-1 ratio where the earning could be 1 to infinite. Yeah. And it's also more liberating, more freeing. And one thing I find myself being critical of other people is someone that does really well and they spend, I feel like, out the cannon. And I'm like, bro, how are you spending money? Like, you're wasting money on that. Like, you're hiring this person to do your laundry, to nanny your kids or something. But then I'm like, hold on, I'm being very critical of someone who's doing substantially better than me financially. I am in no place or shoes to do that. And there's probably a reason that I need to be more curious and critical on that. And so I like that a lot, how you said
hiring
that.
a lady to come clean our house every other week was the best thing I ever did.
Really?
Just, oh yeah, 100%.
Not even for the time, probably even just for the emotional stress.
It's the emotional stress that now my wife doesn't have to worry about cleaning.
Yeah, I think that's something I want to implement. And for people watching is just see where you're saving to a stressful degree, and put that same energy. Don't do nothing with it, but put it into making money, like put it into a positive. I like that a lot. And I think coming from
you can't save yourself out of poverty. Like you really can't.
Yeah, or into riches. You can't become wealthy saving.
Nope.
Saving it to wealth. To kind of take this, towards the end of it. I've talked to you once before, one of our meetings, when you just had 2 boys. Now you have 3. You talked about how everything you're doing is basically to create the life that you want and for them to earn it with you.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go more in depth into that. I'm having a boy here a couple months, so this is getting me excited, seeing you with this. And I kind of want to take even personally from you, from Brady Slack, what's like the sole drive for you doing this for your kids, and kind of what is that dynamic? I know I probably kind of botched it a little bit, but what is that end goal? You've talked about it, and I can tell it's part of you that, means a lot.
No matter what I do, my wife and my kids are my biggest why. Like everything I do is for them, and I could be much better at this, but I try really hard to make sure that I give them the time and attention they need. I work hard and I work a lot. My wife knows that, and she'll remind me. She's very good at making sure that every once in a while she reminds me and says, "Hey, will you notice me instead of that agreement or that contract or that business?" And so I'll have to put things away and change my focus. I could be better, but that to start out, the answer to this question, everything I do is for them. They are my biggest why. I have always been very competitive. I played competitive sports, soccer at a somewhat international competitive level growing up. I played football and was going to go play in college. I have always been very competitive. And since those sports are no longer an aspect of my life, the business and the investing in the money has become that sport for me. And it is, like, for me, it's fun. Like, I started day trading after I sold my business just for fun, but to go in the market every morning and, so last Friday I lost $1,900. On Tuesday I made $2,400. Like, it's fun for me. Right. One of the things that I'm most excited for about what I'm building now and the different businesses that I have now are my boys can actually participate in them. And I've always told myself, and my oldest, Coy, he's 4 now, he's done this a little bit, but like, if I have meetings with attorneys, I want to bring him to those meetings. If I have meetings with business partners, I want to bring him to those meetings. I want him to see and understand and hear those conversations. I want those to be normal for him. Truthfully, and this might be one of the most selfish things I've done, is the real reason why I'm buying this business is because I want to get my dad. I wanted to get my dad out of his W-2 job. He started doing this about 2 years ago, and he would make $150,000 or $200,000 a year doing 1 to 2 jobs every month and a half to 2 months. And I sat on the sideline. I was very clear with my family that I didn't want business or money to come between us. I didn't need to be involved in that business. I had my own ventures. But painstakingly, I sat on the sideline for 2 years. I was bugged because if he just did that full time, he would triple the amount of money he would take home. Like, his take home would be tripled. And so selfishly, I bought that to be able to get my dad out of that W-2 job. And one of the first things I said when I passed it along his desk, I saw it come up on Biz Buy Sell, and I was like, "Hey, I'd be interested in buying this with you. I will finance it. I'll fund it. But you got to quit your job." And he quit his job. Wow. Before we'd even closed.
That's cool, man. That's inspiring.
The other reason that is, like, I am the oldest of 6 boys, and I have a couple brothers who are doing really great in some jobs right now, but I always wanted there to be an opportunity for them. I'm not going to hand it to them. And I'm hard, and they know that. I just have a different personality. I'm just wired differently. That's probably my kryptonite, but it has also blessed me immensely.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity there, and I wanted to create that opportunity so that if they wanted to come and participate, they could. If they wanted to have an equity conversation, they could. It's going to be a hard conversation, and I'm going to put them through it because I have high expectations, but it's there, and I wanted my boys, unless they wanted to file tax return, what could they do in a tax firm, but now they can come clean the shop. They can come clean the trucks. They can go install flooring. Like, they can go do what we're doing. And I wanted to be able to create and build things so that my boys aren't going to get anything handed to them. Like, I want to raise them in a place where they learn to work, in situations where they learn to work. They have animals because I want my 4-year-old knows over the past couple of months he's had to learn that he does not get breakfast until a dog gets breakfast.
Oh,
like
wow. That's cool.
He will learn those things because people our age and younger, they just don't know how to work. They don't know what it takes to be successful. They really don't. And that will not be my boys. And I told my wife a long time ago, it was probably like 6 to 8 months ago, I said, I have 2 really big fears raising kids. One of my fears is that they resent me for pushing them too hard. I do fear that. I fear that later on my boys resent me because I push them too much, but even more so, I fear that I don't push them hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah, does that come from your parents a little bit? Do you feel like you were in that dynamic of maybe being pushed too hard, but you're grateful for it now?
I don't feel. I've talked a lot about this with my parents. I don't feel like they ever pushed me too hard. My parents, in a very healthy way, set a high expectation. They let me know what was and I was the oldest, so I think that expectation was different for me than it is for my younger brothers. Yeah. Not in a bad way necessarily, but in a different way. But they naturally just had a high bar set for me. It was never something that was talked about, but it was just something that I knew. Like, I knew the expectation was that I was going to go on a mission. I knew the expectation was that I was going to graduate high school and that I was going to graduate college. Sorry, Mom, I didn't graduate college. But I knew the expectation was that, I was going to have to take care of a family. I knew the expectation was that I was going to have to work hard. I remember, and I think this was a defining moment in my life. I was on a very competitive soccer team. My mom and dad owned a small cleaning company, so part of their staff were Hispanics, and I was in high school and I picked up a little bit of Spanish. My coach was Chilean, and he called me a bitch in Spanish at practice, and I threw hands with the coach. I was 14 years old and I punched him, and I said, "Call me that one more time and say it to my face in English." Just like that, I was a shit. I really was.
14.
And he said it to me again in my face, and he said it in Spanish, and I wailed on him. And he pushed me back, and I hit him again. And then finally, one of the dads who was watching practice ran over him, kind of broke it up.
Wow.
And it was a huge fiasco. And I remember I was on 114th South and 40th West, turning left to go home. I remember we just got off Bangerter. I remember exactly where we were. My dad got a phone call from the dad who had broken up the fight and said, there needs to be a meeting amongst the parents because of this happened. And my dad said, "I don't need to meet with the other parents. My son will take care of this." And my dad hung up the phone.
Wow.
And he asked me, "What are you going to do about this?" And it wasn't like he was upset at me. It wasn't like I told him the situation. I told him what had happened.
Yeah.
He knew what the situation was. He wasn't upset about it. But he just looked at me and said, "What are you going to do to fix this?" And that was a defining moment for me, realizing I'm in control here. I get to take responsibility for my actions, but I also get to take responsibility for my successes. And I get to choose which one of those two I want to take responsibility for. And that moment for me was pretty impactful.
Brady, thank you, man. Yeah. I think me having a kid and being the oldest, I resonate a lot, man, especially with the oldest child stuff. I think I found more to look up to you for. Outside of all the finance stuff.
Don't look too high. There's a lot I can work on.
No, but I really appreciate you sharing all that stuff and how open you are. I know that you say that straightforward, from the get-go.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate you helped me out in my business, and now some future ideas for raising kids and situations like that.
I wish someone would hand me the manual because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and I'm sure we'll do some more stuff in the future, and I appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thanks for having me.